Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and this video we're breaking down The Faculty. Growing up, this was a movie I absolutely loved, and since then it's gone on to become a cult classic. It's easy to see why too, and going back to it, I was blown away by how much I enjoyed it again. I think when you haven't seen a film for a while, you do kind of forget just how good it is. But The Faculty is one of the best movies from the 90s. We've done the math, and this is a true piece of art that no doubt will go down in history. Throughout this video, we'll be breaking it all down and discussing why it's ahead of the class. So come with me and make sure you're subscribed, and with that out of the way, let's get into The Faculty.
I don't want to blow smoke up your butt here, but I think you found a new species.
Yeah, right.
Hey, it could happen. New species are discovered every day.
So The Faculty came out during a time in which deconstructions were a big thing. Film had established several staples of stories, but along the way there'd also come several tropes. Directors like Quentin Tarantino, his work's clearly a nod to what's come before. Lots of directors and writers were doing this, and it was very much a meta time in movies. Now, one person who capitalized on this was Kevin Williams, who'd made his name as the writer of Scream. Scream set up characters who'd watched every kind of slasher movies, and thus because of their knowledge they'd become aware of the tropes. Because of this, the smart ones could avoid them and thus make it to the end of the movie. Scream was obviously, a massive success, and Williamson then went on to work on Dawson's Creek. During this he crafted I Know What You Did Last Summer, and he was one of the emerging voices in Hollywood. Having tackled two slashers, Williamson then turned his eyes to a different kind of horror. That was the alien invasion. Around the time, David Westchester and Bruce Kimmel were putting together the idea, but their initial scripts didn't pick up any interest. However, after the success of Scream, Williamson was brought in to shape it to a screenplay. Rewriting the dialogue and setting up the characters, he made it a much more modern kind of movie. I think you can also see the influences throughout. Whether it's The Thing, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or even The X-Files, it's all laid out here. Gillian Anderson even turned down the role of Principal Drake, which would have made the influences clearer. The name Drake is also a nod to the Drake equation, which is used to work out how much intelligent life there is likely to be in space once we multiply things by distance. So lots of ties to clever ideas, and Williamson was then asked to direct, but he stepped back to focus on teaching Mrs. Tingle, which 19% on Rotten Tomatoes, mate. I don't know if you made the right choice there. However, who he got instead was Robert Rodriguez, which certainly isn't a bad trade-off. Assembling what would now be seen as a star-studded cast, it's pretty crazy that almost all these actors were unknown. Like Selma Hayek, she's in for about 2 minutes, and yeah, I totally forgot how many big names there were in this. She obviously worked with Rodriguez on From Dusk Till Dawn, and the movie's just packed with massive actors. At its heart though, is a story of conformity. I think the film's biggest inspiration is Body Snatchers, which the movie references throughout.
I think something's taking over our school.
Body Snatchers is a story somebody made up, dingus.
Now, in our breakdown of the 70s version, we touched upon why this story keeps getting remade. Whether it's that one, the 90s, the 2000s invasion, the film's subject matter, it still feels relevant. Though Faculty isn't an official adaptation, I think you'd be remiss for not saying it forms the basis. Now, to me, it's timeless because the idea of conformity and rebellion is something that's evergreen. We're always going to be told to act a certain way, and deep down there's a part of us that wants to go against this. The 90s was a real time of counterculture, and I feel like The Faculty just hits the right spot. Teenagers and adults were getting swept up in these ideas, and come the end of the decade we'd have The Matrix and Fight Club. I think The Faculty captures that mood as well, and we've got everyone from different walks of life. It feels like The Breakfast Club mixed with Men in Black, and it's still an excellent film. Now, from the off, we get the punk attitude on full display. Hearing the song The Kids Aren't Alright by The Offspring, I'm sure you can guess how that song plays into the movie. However, it's initially the faculty members that are targeted by the alien. Watching the coach berate the players on the field, we see Zienza becoming the first to be infected. Now, when discussing Body Snatchers, we talked about the MO of the creatures. The first to be infected were the higher-ups, and Robert Duvall cameoed as a creepy priest swinging at a park. This was because religions have a lot of influence, and thus he was the first to be chosen. Now, you might think a coach is weird as a first choice, but we get this line later on.
Have you seen the football stadium on a Friday night, Mr. Tate? The entire town is there. This is a football town.
As we learn, all of the school's budget's going to the football team, and the other departments have had their stuff cut.
There's just no money for a musical this year.
But I bet the football team gets their new jerseys and their new equipment.
Footballs everywhere in the school, with even the colours of the hallway matching the team. So the coach is actually the person with the most influence, and thus Mary Beth goes to him first. This is staged similar to The Thing, where a husky initially enters a room to claim its first victim. We get an ambiguous shadow on the wall, which was meant to represent either Norris or Palmer. Here it's an ambiguous woman, which stirs the coach from his anger. The next scene with the principal has her stabbed by Mrs. Olsen, and thus on a first watch, you just assume it's her. She's also played by the legendary Piper Laurie, who's probably best known as being the mother in Carrie, which is a great way to play it. Just 7 years prior, Patrick had also blown up playing a villain as well. That is of course the T-1000, who's easily one of the most memorable villains ever. So having these two legends of terror, it just makes you suspect that they're the ones running the show. That's why the movie plays so well with your expectations, and on a first watch, I don't think anyone suspected the truth. However, Patrick wasn't the only person considered for the part. Bill Paxton was also in early talks too, and to be honest, I think he would have been fantastic as well. He was of course in Aliens, Terminator, and Predator 2, so I think it kind of shows the kind of actor they were hoping to clinch. Clearly that casting is done for a reason, and it's all meant to make the audience think, these are the ones who are leading the charge. Patrick later runs just like the T-1000 in the school, and this is also a clear reference to Terminator. This was deliberately shot to look like the asylum escape when the machine chases the heroes to the lift. However, that's not the only reference to the film. Jon Stewart's character's named Professor Edward Furlong, with that being a name to the actor who played John Connor in T2, which is a great way to build off this. Hold on a sec, is that Usher? Now you might also notice that the team's called the Hornets. To kick the hornet's nest means to disturb something placid, which then unleashes the wrath of the insects. Now though you could apply this to the alien, I also think it could be applied to the humans. The hosts are trying to make us placid, chilled out, but I don't think they quite know what they bargained for. Humans are unruly, we're destructive, we'll pull anything down that we want, and we're the worst people to take over. I will destroy anything that gets in my way, and I know you guys out there do as well, so yeah, give yourself a pat on the back. So maybe that's what they mean by the Hornets, and yeah, it's just something I thought about when watching this film. Now I love how we also see the coach losing his temper to start the movie. Body Snatchers basically stripped away the personality of those they took over, and this led to them conforming with the hive. As we see, the guys chill later on, and because of this, people suspect something's off. Setting the opening on the football field, it also sets the groundwork for the ending when the whole town comes to watch the game. According to IMDb trivia, a lot of the film was shot at a high school in Lockhart, Texas. The football team even showed up for scenes, and the entire crowd were given Hornets t-shirts for the end. Hornets also live in a hive, which nicely reflects what the alien wants to make us. Hornets also work for a queen, which is what Mary Beth is viewed as. See, I told you there was some symbolism to the Hornet stuff. The queen idea of course also plays off Alien, and the beast reveals itself for the climax. Some little clues to this can also be seen in some of Mary Beth's lines. She's the first person who says they have a queen, and also refers to the master as her.
Well, where are we gonna find her?
Obviously she's aware of what's going on, so it gives away a little clue about her. Now we then cut to the school, and Principal Drake has to head back inside after leaving something in the office. Now going in there, she passes by a poster that shows a hand holding the world. This represents one person being in control, and that kind of represents what Mary Beth's goals are. Inside, I also love the tonal change. The movie becomes like a slasher with Coach Willis stalking the corridors. Even with his face slashed, he's unflinching and unstoppable, which plays into several horror icons. Obviously the Terminator's one, but stuff like Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, they all move like unbeatable machines. It also helps to recontextualize the school and paint it out as a place of horror. Things in the daylight wouldn't seem off, but at night these things take on a life of their own. Even the biology class we see her go into, it's got things like skeletons standing in the shadows. Obviously, these are just used for teaching, but shot at night, it's almost like a haunted house. Managing to escape, she's then slashed by Mrs. Olsen, which subtly pays homage to Psycho. There the shower scene was shown at a similar angle, and the knife being slashed down like this. It also gives the ideas it's the ones you least suspect, and that your worst enemy could be this nice looking lady. But I've seen Carrie, and I don't like her. Also, just how unemotional she is about it, yeah. Great way to kickstart the movie. We also get Patrick framed in the ajar door, which creates a look akin to Jack in The Shining. A huge shout out to our partners at Arrow Video, who sell a ton of 4K Blu-rays on some really classic titles. They've got movies like The Great Escape, Silence of the Lambs, Candyman, RoboCop, and a lot more. For 10% off, click my link in the description and use the code HEAVYSPOILERS. That's 10% off in my link in the description with the code HEAVYSPOILERS. You deserve it, mate. Treat yourself. Now this then takes us to the next day where we get the Breakfast Club opening. Pulling up in a 70s Pontiac, we're introduced to the school's bad boy Zeke. Stuffing crushed caffeine pill pens into his pocket, these become their best weapon in the fight. Hartnett's hair's also pretty wild in the movie, and he also had this in Halloween H2O. Apparently both sets hated it, but Hartnett kept wearing it to make him look like a more authentic teen. According to IMDb trivia, producers on H2O tried to get him fired for it, but as we know, both films wrap with him in. And we also see two cars crash into each other, which then evolves into a fight. Body Snatchers often had things like this throughout, where you'd see people's tempers flaring. However, as the movie progressed, we'd see how these people became more and more placid. So it's a great thing to have in the background, and it's at this point that we're introduced to Casey. Apologizing for getting elbowed in the face, it's clear he's a complete doormat. Now this set would actually be life-changing for Elijah Wood. Critic Harry Knowles appears in the movie, and he was working alongside the actor. He'd actually heard Peter Jackson was making Lord of the Rings and thought that Wood would be perfect for Frodo. The rumour was that Jackson was only casting British actors though, and thus Wood was slightly dissuaded. However, Knowles convinced him to send in an audition tape, and as they say, the rest is history. Rodriguez would also later cast him in Sin City, which interestingly would also feature Josh Hartnett. Now from here we meet Stokely, Stan and Delilah, with this creating a love triangle. Stokely and Stan constantly bump into each other, and back in the 90s, that's how people fell in love. You knock books out of a woman's hand, mate, and help pick them up. She's yours. Speaking of carrying books, we then see Mary Beth asking directions. Credited as Tattoo Girl, this is none other than Rodriguez's daughter Christina, which is a nice little cameo. Inside, we also get Danny Masterson, who, the less said about the better. His character's called Fuck Up One though, which, yeah, kinda sums up everything. Enjoy jail! In the hall, we then see a couple fighting, with the boyfriend here being played by John Abrahams. If you recognise the actor, that's because he appeared in Scary Movie. Possibly, that's how I recognise him.
Get out of me! Nobody's messing with your head! Get out of me! Nobody's messing with your head,
I love how we see them going at each other though, and then later on the bench he seems completely checked out. This then comes full circle later on when we can see the pair are both back in love. It highlights the progression of possession and is such a great way to show how it's growing. In the background we can also hear a cover of Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. The song deals with lots of things that play into the movie really well. It's about rigid schooling headed up by teachers who operate as authorities to push an oppressive system. Most of the time this leads to indoctrination, and all in all people just become another brick in the wall. So it has a great tie to Conformity and fits in with the movie really well, especially as it's examining the school system. What I love about the movie though is that all the students kinda represent a different culture. You've got your nerds, your jocks, your people who hit the thumbs up, your cheerleaders, new girls, and also your bad boys. However, what I appreciate about the film is that it subverts these ideas. Though Zeke's being held back and could be seen as stupid, he's actually a genius when it comes to chemistry. Stan's the captain of the football team, but we learn throughout the film that he actually wants to drop out to study. We also have Casey, who's a bit of a victim, but he gets to be the hero at the end. Look at him! He's gelled his hair, he's cool now. Pulled Jordana Brewster, well done. At this point though, he's in the bathroom with a nosebleed clearly walled off from the rest of the world. In what's a nice little Easter egg, we can also see some graffiti that says Tito and Tarantula. According to IMDb trivia, this is the band of Tito Larriva who composed songs for Rodriguez on From Dusk Till Dawn. Now from here, we then cut to the Faculty Lounge. The Faculty? I don't know, it's a bit of a weird name for a movie, and honestly, I think it kind of undersells it. Rodriguez felt this as well, and he's said to have hated the name. However, the Weinsteins, in all their wisdom, they said it had to stay. Honestly though, I don't know if it fully works, and it doesn't really tell us what this movie is. However, the only other idea they had was the feelers, so out of the two, I think this works better. Anyway, in the lounge you meet ill nurse Harper, who says,
I'm saving my sick days for when I feel better.
Harper gets infected later on, but we don't really see her much after this. From what I can gather though, the aliens cured her virus and this was meant to sell them as being better. She does appear later on with a glow up, and yeah, it does seem like she's completely fine there. Professor Furlong also says,
Maybe I should just put a pen in my eye.
This nicely foreshadows the moment later on where Zeke stabs him in the eye with a pen. As the coach chugs back water, we also see a sign next to Professor Furlong's head. This says the floggings will continue until morale improves. This is being used throughout history to criticize how harsh punishment often doesn't boost morale. It's better to lead with kindness, and it's a technique that Mary Beth uses. Later on, when she's trying to tempt Stokely, she talks about how there's no hate in her world. So whether this was put up by the aliens or not, it's a nice sign to tie into the themes. We also have Famke Janssen here, who is coming hot off the heels of GoldenEye. There, she made a big impression to lots of young boys my age, and in my ranking of Bond girls, she comes out on a top.
Get off the stage!
Rewatching this though, I don't know, like, seeing she's clearly dating Zeke at the end,
I'm getting the word nonce.
I remember being in school and we all had that hot teacher that all of the guys fancied. So it's sort of playing on that fantasy, and when I seen this when I was a kid, I was like, yeah, nice, good on you, Zeke, nice, well done, nice.
Gross! It's getting in my mouth!
There are theories online now that she dated Zeke when she was a senior and he was a freshman, and then she left the school and got a job. Personally, I think that's just trying to avoid the obvious, because yeah, she's like 30 years old, mate. I'm not sure of all the ins and outs of high school in America, but I think if he could have graduated, then that would make him 19, so like, yeah, you're still going to jail though. Either way, I kind of feel like this part bridges the gap between Xenia and Jean Grey. She has to do the sexy sultress thing the former did, but also the academic and intelligent part that was Jean. So it's great seeing her evolve as an actor, and in the classroom she talks about Crusoe. Discussing his fears, they chalk it down to the agony of isolation. The movie is of course about coming together, and each of the characters could be seen as loners. Even though Stan and Delia are dating, it's clear the pair aren't exactly on the same page. She's only dating him because he's captain of the football team, and she shuts down his ambitions.
The accepted social order is head cheerleaders, state star quarterbacks, not academic wannabes.
Thus he ends up with Stokely, who's more supportive about who he is. Cutting to Mr. Tate's class, he then reads an excerpt that's directly about the film.
Only through conformity among the masses can the unified state offer the benefits of power, order, and security.
We also catch Mary Beth staring at Stokely, and outside she sits down to talk with her. Now, one of the big questions around the movie is, why is Mary Beth so nice to the outcasts? Knowing what we know, she could easily take them to the side and infect them specifically. We even get a moment where she has a kiss with Zeke, but he doesn't get infected while doing this. Because of this though, it's thought Mary Beth views this group as the strongest students, and thus they could threaten her rule. Because of this, she tries to play upon their isolation and tempt them with joining her side. Seeing how alone they are, she sees them as being lost and wants to offer them a sense of place. When you think about it, that's also likely how Mary Beth feels as well. From what we can gather, she's the last of her kind who's a refugee that fled from a destroyed world. So she may see some kinship in the loners and even want to be friends with them beyond this. The infected seem to have some parts of them still in there, as Mrs. Olsen says,
I always wanted to do that.
The infected clearly retain their memories, and in the end, it's seen more as a possession. It's also possible to cure people from the aliens, and after killing the Queen, they all return to normal. So they're definitely still in there, as opposed to like the pod duplicates in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So maybe she just likes them as people.
We'll use the power of friendship.
Come the locker room, Mary Beth rattles off a speech about how Stokely and Stan can finally be together. I think the Queen's so powerful, she knows she can easily win against the humans, and is therefore just kind of toying with the group. She wants to convince them rather than force them, but failing that, she retorts to it in the end. Now Delia then appears and she says Stokely's a lesbian. Delia was originally written for Charisma Carpenter, but she turned it down due to how similar it was to her part in Buffy. That was also a big show at the time that definitely felt like it influenced the script. Mary Beth seems supportive of her sexuality though, which shows how accepting she is to everyone. Like to her, it doesn't really matter and everyone's welcome to work for the Queen.
She's an ally. Talk, Valentina. Ally.
Stokely later says she's straight and that being gay works as a security to keep people away. So just like how the jock's really smart, we have the subversion with the lesbian being straight. Clea DuVall would actually come out as gay years later, and thus the analysis of the characters taken on a second life. Several people have compared being gay during the 90s to feeling alien, and thus it works well with the film's themes. Now speaking of feeling alien, Mary Beth gives away another clue here.
I feel pretty alien myself today.
You don't say! We also see that Stokely's reading Double Star by Robert Heinlein.
Double Star, Robert Heinlein.
Boiled down to its basics, the book involves an actor who's tasked with impersonating a politician. So this idea of pretending to be something you're not can be seen in a lot of the characters. That of course includes Mary Beth, and it's a really neat touch for the movie. Heinlein's work took on a sci-fi edge, and though the politician's story could be seen as grounded, the author had it take place across the solar system. It involved Martians, space travel, and yeah, it was an elevated concept. You can also apply that to the film, as we have a grounded high school dealing with an alien invasion. Out of all the high schools shown in fiction, I'd say this is probably one of the closest to real life. It's not some sitcom sort of thing like Saved by the Bell, and yeah, it mixed the groundedness with the absurd.
Y'all believe in alternate universes and alien beings and stuff?
With Casey, we then see as he discovers a dried up parasite. This is from the attack on the coach, and it leads into the kids discovering the species. This takes us into the classic lab scene that feels like it's ripped right out of Gremlins. Even down to Usher spilling water on the creature, it all riffs off the school scene in that movie. However, it's kind of a staple of these films in general, with a teacher being like, "You discovered a new species. I know I'm a high school teacher and haven't checked this, but you discovered a brand new species, pal. Well done." It's in this that we get a proper look at its design, with it being like a fish mixed with a xenomorph. The mouth retracts, and though there's beauty to the creature, it also has a deadly side. Now, as they lean into the fish tank, you might also notice Kid Ada Jones over Elijah Wood's shoulder. In case you don't know, this is the daughter of Quincy Jones, and originally she was a big part of the movie. Throughout the film, you'll constantly see people wearing Tommy Hilfiger, and the brand provided clothes for the movie. They also had the cast as part of an advert.
Tommy jeans make a scene.
Kidada was amongst the group, and she played the character Venus. However, all of her major scenes were cut, but she's sort of the sixth Beatle of the group. Playing the part of Usher's girlfriend, I'm guessing she would have wrestled with the character's turn. Unfortunately, we don't know, but yeah, if anything's emerged about what she was really doing, please drop it below, because I know there's lots of new releases coming out and lots of info and trivia coming out about the film, so drop it below. Stan then quits the team, and though he expects the coach to blow off, he's suspiciously reserved.
What kind of human being would I be if I did that?
I love that line because, clearly, how do fellow kids, and just a really bad attempt at pretending to be human. That's how I feel, dressed up like a high schooler, you know. Do kids listen to Black Sabbath these days? I don't know, but I've had a shave to make myself look younger. Don't look any closer. Don't look at the lines on my face. How do you do, fellow kids? Do you want some YouTube shorts? No cap, my YouTube shorts are lit.
What are you doing?
Now we then see as Stan goes to the shower and get another clear reference to The Shining. Just like how Jack found himself in the arms of a crone from room 237, Stan has a similar experience. Her skin has sores on it, her head's coming apart, and it just makes for a really creepy moment. Blaming cancer, Mrs. Olsen then covers for the character. We also see as Casey spots the coach standing in a field getting covered by the sprinklers. It feels very Halloween, namely when Michael Myers was watching Laurie through the classroom window. Outside, we then catch Zeke selling adult videotapes.
It's Nev Campbell and Jennifer Love Hewitt, right?
Though this is likely a nod to Party of Five, it could also be a connection to Williamson. Nev Campbell was the lead in Scream, with Jennifer Love Hewitt being in I Know What You Did Last Summer. Interestingly, she starred alongside Sarah Michelle Gellar, who also got offered a part in this movie. However, similar to Carpenter, she turned it down due to being in Buffy. Miss Burke then goes to Zeke, where he keeps trying to sell her flavoured condoms, which if she ended up dating him, it's gonna be issues, mate. Like at the end of the movie, they have this big thing with all the alien stuff being in all the news, but this, mate, this is what would have been reported on Fox and stuff.
Ken, what have you learned, sir? Oh, shit. Okay.
Anyway, with Casey and Delilah, we see them talking about news stories, and the former says they can run the new species thing. As this is going on, though, water's wheeled in, and they constantly have these canisters appearing in the movie. My favourite one happens in a blink and you'll miss a moment when Casey gets dropped off at school. Walking up, we see a truck full driving on the campus, which is such a nice detail to have in the background. Anyway, inside the faculty lounge, the pair see the nurse get infected. This is done through them dropping a parasite in her ear, which feels akin to how the aliens took over their hosts during Animorphs. There's a nice little bits of humour here as well, like Mrs. Olsen just throwing a full cup into her face. However, we also have the aspects of horror with Mrs. Brummel's body falling out of the darkness. This feels like a little nod to Psycho, with a corpse being discovered similar to Norman Bates' mother. Even the way she's rotting seems like it's riffing off the movie, and it's such a creepy jump scare to have in the moment. We also get some zombie parallels as the students rush out the room. The nurse comes alive and grabs Delilah by the ankle, which is a classic motif. Gaslit by the rest of the teachers, they realise something off and the pair rush home and get the police. It's here that we meet Casey's parents, with his dad being played by Christopher McDonald. You might know him as Shooter McGavin, and they even do a little nod towards this with the coach.
Good luck in the game tomorrow, coach.
In the back office, we also have the police being infected and the parasites are starting to spread throughout the town. Being a parent to 3-year-old twins at this point, you know, I think you could even see that as a way a virus spreads in a school. If you've got kids, you'll know what I mean, and if a virus gets spread in the school, then they all take it home and give it to the parents. Like, if you go back to my videos from 2 years ago, yeah, you'll probably be able to hear that I had a cold for about 80% of them, I'd say. Either way though, on a practical level, it makes sense they'd operate the way they do, and the next day all the kids are given ear tests. Before that though, we go to Casey's home and get a look at his room. On the door there's a butterfly, and these often represent transformation. I don't think it's coincidence that from this point on, Delilah also wears a top with a butterfly on it. She's later revealed to be infected, but when this happens, we really don't know. However, now playing theorized that it happened when she got home, and that's why the police couldn't get in touch with her. We also see the teachers go through a globe where she shows up the next day dressed like a nerd. So potentially, the parasites can make you act the opposite, and this explains her change in appearance. However, it has to be said that she says she's going incognito, and the school tannoy is still calling out for her. So potentially she's still human at this point, and yeah, to be honest, I always thought she was while doing this. Casey clearly loves her though, and he's got photos of her on the wall right above his bed. We then see his readers' wives magazines are stuffed under it, and this being right below the pictures of her, yeah, it's a bit suspicious. What are you doing there, mate? Magazine's called Boob. The Boob magazine. Climbing out his room, Casey then spots the teachers outside his house. This kind of shot's iconic in horror, and Jordan Peele would later reference it in Us. In a further callback to the shadows in The Thing, we also see as a silhouette closes the curtains. Though this could be Casey's mother, it's also possible it's Mrs. Olsen, so I like how this works. It's also possible that Casey's dad gets infected the next day, as we see the coach lean into his ear. Whether that's the case or not, the suspicion's there, and thus Casey has no adults he can turn to. Inside, Casey also passes Mr. Tate, and we can see he's carrying a bottle of water. Before this, he'd been drinking from his mug and even filling it up with alcohol. Just a great detail to show that he's changed, and I love this little alteration to the character. Going back to the lounge, we then see how much it's changed, with everyone sipping on that sweet, sweet water. Now after Stokely and Stan get close, we see Zeke and Mary Beth talking at the lockers. He offers her some magic dust, which she quickly rebuffs. Obviously, kids should say no to drugs, but knowing she's an alien, this rejection just adds a double side to it. She then says,
I'm allergic to aspirin, so that would probably kill me.
However, later on she still comes out fine after the test, so it's saying she's either lying here or she didn't really take it. Noticing something's off, the druggies return to offer to buy all of Zeke's stash. Like, all of it. Obviously they want it as it's their weakness, but before things kick off, Miss Burke arrives. Turned up to 11, she's now cussing him out, pushing his chest, and it's a definite lawsuit there, mate. Definite lawsuit at this point. In the library, we then get a staple of Williamson's style, with him calling out all the influences on the work. This includes the pod people from the Body Snatchers, and even other invasion films like Independence Day. She also talks about lesser known works like Puppet Master, which was also written by Heinlein. The movie adaptation was released in 1994, with it starring Donald Sutherland and Keith David. The former starred in the 70s Body Snatcher, with the latter starring in The Thing. So it's a great way to bring these influences together, and Stokely rattles off all the tropes. It basically makes her this movie's Randy, and it has a clear basis in Scream. One line that's always stuck with me is how aliens wouldn't just show up and blow up the White House. They'd probably try and sneak in through the back door, and thus a little school's the perfect place to do it. Casey even theorized that Spielberg and Lucas might have encountered aliens at one point, and that they're now making movies about it. I kinda hope that after this film, Casey then goes on to make a Faculty movie, and that's always kind of a fan fiction that I've built in my head. We then get the group finally coming together, and as a team they take down Furlong. Though some initially start off skeptical, this proves that something else is going on. I absolutely love the way the scene's shot, and yeah, it just feels like such a great moment.
Zeke.
Just feels like such a heroic moment, and everyone getting on the same page. What I also love is how setting this in a school means they get the chance for some unique kills. For example, you've got your pencil at the start, which gets stabbed through the principal's hand. Can't show it because of YouTube, but yeah, it's a great little moment. Here we have them using a guillotine, and then the bleachers at the end. So it all comes together, and yeah, they use the school setting really well. Anyway, Furlong leans into Zeke, and he opens his mouth to spit out a parasite. This feels like it's referencing Body Snatchers and the cry the pod people do. Furlong then gets stabbed in the eye, but don't worry kids, the guy survives. Come the end of the film during the credits, we get a character shot that shows him with an eye patch. He also has a bandage on his fingers as these got cut off in the fight. Heading out, we see all the students stare at them, and it's now clear they're in the minority. This is a similar switch to what happened in Body Snatchers, with the midpoint changing the dynamics. We also had characters constantly being stared at, which is something that was rampant throughout the movie. Here, they're doing the same thing, and all of the radio stations are off. Police have also set up blockades, and thus they have to head to Zeke's. We then get our first reference to the Thing with them putting a parasite into a mouse. The tendrils wrap around it and pull it in, which is similar to the dog scene. During the assimilation moment, we could see a dog wrapped up like this. This then leads into them all sniffing the magic stick, which becomes like the blood test in the film. There's even a gun used at one point, so it's clearly playing off the scene. On a rewatch, we also see Delilah clearly take the fall for the Queen. Saying she'll only do it if Mary Beth does it too, the focus on her allows her to draw away attention. One thing that has always annoyed me a bit though was when the reveal happens, we see Mary Beth's fingers changed and it let out the dust. Going back to it, yeah, this never happened, but a lot of the focus was on Delilah, so we'll let it slip for now. Shout out to Queen of Geekdom for pointing out though that all the girls have chipped nail varnish on their fingers. This was because they were trying to paint out a more realistic world, and thus all the characters aren't prim and proper. Mary Beth plays up the act well though, and she laughs as Delilah gets away. Little detail that I love is that Tate's also the one driving the car. Heading to the school, we then see the game going down and hear Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. Again, performed by Class of 99, this was the film's big song. A lot of the cast appear in the music video as well, with them lip syncing the lyrics. However, shoutouts to IMDb Trivia for pointing out that Stokely doesn't mouth the lyrics, which kind of fits in with her character. Either way, this is the perfect opportunity for the parasites to spread, and on the field we see them infecting the players. Going to the gym, the principal arrives and they end up taking her down. Another great little clue to Mary Beth is that she chucks the entire stash over Drake. On first watch, it's played like she's just panicking, whereas in hindsight, we get why she does it. Unsure over whether the parasites are dead, Stan heads out into the field. Coming across the coach, I love how they use lightning to show what's under his skin. Such a great effect, and it continues the misdirect that he's in charge. As an audience though, we know he wasn't the first, but you can see how the characters would suspect it. Sadly, Stan gets turned, but he ends up coming back to try and get in. Clearly the guy's acting suspicious, but he tries to tempt Stokely with the hive mind. To be honest, they don't really sell the downsides of it in the movie, and yeah, sign me up. Get that glow up. Get my facial hair back and that glow up. Now, if you want to sign up to that collab on YouTube, yeah, why not check out our membership program? For just 99 cents a month, you'll get early access to at least one video a week before anyone else. It makes a massive difference to the channel, and yeah, thank you guys for all your support. Anyway, they realize the only stash they have left's in the car, and they make a mad dash for it. Stalked by the football team, I love how Stan's back as the captain. It highlights how he's lost his individuality and is now just falling back in line. Getting on a bus, this just so happens to have Delilah on it, and she tries to seduce Casey. This is mirrored to Mrs. Burke, who approaches Zeke's car. In what's a replay of the scene at the car before, we see how the positions of power have flipped. Gonna be honest, yeah mate, if Famke Janssen comes onto me like this, I'm folding. I'd be like the Admiral in GoldenEye. Just let me die happy. Zeke then crashes the car and we watch as Burke's thrown through the windshield. Love how you can spot the dummy there, and to be honest, I kinda miss dummies in movies. These days they just do CGI characters, but I do miss the good old days where we had really bad dummies. We then get another reference to the Thing as Burke's head slithers across the floor. This is a clear nod to Norris, whose head was detached and then sprouted tentacles. I wonder if Zeke will be getting head later on. Nah, but seriously though, yeah, she's in a position of power and he's a student and she should definitely go to jail. Anyway, back at the gym, in what's a nice bit of visual iconography, we see red strands dangling from the ceiling. These create the metaphor for the tentacles and then now surrounding the characters. Stokely then explains the ending of Body Snatchers and she says the bad guys win. However, in both the book and movie, it was the humans who won out in the end, so she may be referring to the 70s version, but just a little correction for the movie there, love. I'm going to be getting enough corrections in the comments, so you deserve one as well. Now at this point, Mary Beth reveals who she is and we see the Queen in full form. I love the mix of practical with CGI and it creates a very convincing creature. Pulled in the water, we also get a reference to Jaws as the alien swims up to Stokely. Managing to escape, Mary Beth then walks about naked. Around the time we had films like Species species that really played into the sex appeal of aliens. Mary Beth also tries to tempt Zeke, but he's a bit confused about why she's naked. Grabbed by Stokely, Casey saves the day and he manages to trap her in the equipment locker. Forced to sniff the dust to prove he's human, the ending basically has Casey high taking down the creature. It makes for a great finale though, and I always loved how the ending goes down. Zeke's tossed and knocked out, and then Mary Beth tries to tempt Casey. The way her tentacles create shadows on the ground as she walks by also feels very Lovecraftian. The tentacle designs is a reference to Cthulhu, and the imagery was later adopted into posters for Lovecraft Country. Mary Beth then rattles off about how her planet used to be a giant ocean, but when it dried up she had to escape. Recognizing some kinship in the loners, she wanted to give them a taste of her world. Though she says they'd be equals, they'd also clearly be slaves of Mary Beth. So Casey ends up rejecting her, which leads to the chase at the bleachers. Growing up, I always thought the little dive he does through the diamond at the end was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen in a movie. Stabbing her in the eye with a pen, he gets the final line, and yeah, it's ripped right out of a classic action movie.
Guaranteed to jack you up.
Also love how there's a sense of sorrow though as we see the creature slowly dying. It definitely feels like there's a bittersweet side to it as the fight comes with a cost.
You wouldn't have liked it here anyway.
Sound like a bloody parasite this entire video, get him! Anyway, a month later, life seems to have returned to normal. Zeke's on the football team, Burke's going to jail, probably, and Stokely and Stan are dating each other. She's now wearing violet and has brightened up her hair, which I guess she conformed in the end. Photographing a butterfly, we then join Casey, which brings the metaphor for transformation full circle. Though Time magazine saying it's a hoax, we see Delilah's reports are telling the truth. This is painting out Casey as a hero, and yeah, the guy got the girl and saved the day, saying,
Things sure have changed, haven't they?
we see a poor nerd being rammed into a pole. That's how we were introduced to Casey, and it doesn't look like things have changed much, eh mate? Doesn't bloody look like it. Anyway, that wraps up The Faculty, and I hope you guys have enjoyed going through the movie. I've had a blast, and I think it's one of my favourite films from the decade. I get people taking the mick out of me, because like, I think on the Fight Club and 7 video I said both were my favourite Fincher movie, but hey, to be fair, I've got a lot of recency bias. Basically, I have 20 movies in my top 10 movies list, and though this isn't in it, I think it's really good. So if you're watching this without rewatching the movie, I definitely think you should go and check it out. There is a brand new 4K out which I use for this review. Not getting paid to promote this, but yeah, it's definitely worth it. The transfer is really good, and yeah, pick it up, it's a great film. Please drop a like on this video as well, and also leave a comment with your thoughts on the film. Now if you want something else to watch, you got a video on screen right now breaking down another classic. Hopefully I see you guys over there right after this, but if not, thank you for sitting through this video. With out of the way, I've been your host Paul, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.